Chasin The Racin, powered by Colchester Kawasaki, part of the Global Moto Group. We supply new Aprilia, Moto Guzzi, Vespa, Royal Enfield, Kawasaki, Sim, Mutt and Benelli motorcycles.
3, 2, 1, and welcome back to Chasin The Racin, episode 172, and we're delighted to be joined by Alan Carter, the 1982 250 Grand Prix winner.
83.
do not. That is the first time, right? Okay, for all you listeners out there, right? That is the first time we've actually ballsed up an intro in round about like 100 episodes.
Right,
and
it's me that's ballsed it up.
Mate, sadly, we are cut from the same cloth these days. Your mistakes are mine and vice versa. But hey, 1983 and you're still balls it up. So hello, Alan. Good to have you on the show, mate.
Hi guys, yeah, great to be here.
We did actually have Alan on the show back. It was one of the first episodes we did, and we were back when we were doing Skype interviews. And so that interview is still on the internet somewhere. So every day people still like listen to it, even though it's ages ago. But yeah, it was before we had the studio, and it's
mood lighting.
Yeah,
we all look very tanned.
It's nice to be. I know I came to see you in your new place like last year or something, but it's lovely and peaceful, lovely part of the world, isn't it?
Yeah, just obviously north of Cadwell. Absolutely fabulous. Just living life in Lincolnshire. Lots of people seem to know me through Cadwell, and started my new business in 2018, and landscaping and gardening and so forth. And people have really took to me, and it's been fabulous. It's just been a dream.
Yeah. I tell you what, it's a perfect job for you, mate, because the size of this trophy, you could put a lot of hedge trimmings in that, mate. That is a very impressive trophy, that, sir. So that was from 1983. Which race was that from then? I feel like I've skipped a massive part. Sorry, Chrissy.
This particular one was when I won the French Grand Prix.
Jesus.
Which, to be honest, I don't have many trophies, because one of my things was I used to give everything away. All my leathers, helmets, boots, gloves, and all my trophies. So I've got very few left, but this one was it was a good day, good win.
Is that lots of riders are different? Like I know certain people have a thing about helmets where they always keep at least a helmet from each year, or leathers. For me, it's always been leathers. It's the one thing that I've kept all the way through and like in my loft, I've got loads and loads of sets of leathers. Do you regret giving away sort of trophies and helmets and?
I don't regret it. I think the only times you regret sort of doing that is when you did it to somebody, and then in the modern world, obviously we didn't have eBay and Amazon and all that stuff. So basically, when somebody sends me a message and says, "Oh, this is on sale on Amazon," and you think, "Jesus, I give that guy that as a gift, as a real momentum of that day," and he's flogged it, then that's a bit annoying, but.
The price of fame, you see, that's your own fault, lad.
So we'll have a good chat about sort of what you're up to these days, and your involvement with the racing now. But some people will be listening or watching to this podcast that didn't listen to the previous one, and so we'll go sort of talk a little bit about your background and like how you sort of got to where you are now, if you like. So in fact, we had Ron Haslam on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you listened to it, but obviously with your father who got the Haslams into racing, there was Mal got mentioned a few times, and quite often on the podcast, obviously people's sort of careers cross, and yourself and sort of Farah Racing get mentioned quite a bit.
Yeah, obviously my dad met Phil Haslam somewhere along the line, and they become really, really close, best friends, really close. And Phil had that tragic accident, obviously at Oliver's Mount in Scarborough, and lost his life. And then from then, my dad took, Ron under his wing and wanted to continue that legacy. And me and Ron became really good friends, and Ron became my coach and mentor along with my dad. And we kind of hit the Grand Prix similar times. Ron was a little bit before me, but he was riding for Honda. At that sort of early 80s, 83, 4, 5. And, Ron, it was brilliant, really. It helped me immensely.
At what age when your dad stopped racing himself and started sort of sponsoring riders and getting like the Haslams and stuff? Was that so? In your early years, was your dad still racing then?
No, when I was a kid, I used to go to Cadwell and watch him, and he was really quick. He was a big guy, he's plenty of, beef on him. He was a chubby bloke, and his speciality, Mal's speciality, was the wet. I mean, he was good in the dry, but some go in the wet. And so, as I got a bit older and I got more involved, I just became the team's gopher. So, there was Howard Gregory and Pete Hoy's Pharaoh Pete, and I became the gopher. For example, like we'd go to Cadwell and they would decide to go on a session in Louth for some booze, and they said that I was the general in control, and I was obviously, I've got to be honest, I was a bit not that bright in them days, and they said, we'll set you a TV up and fuel for the generator and everything, and this particular time I ran out of fuel, and I thought, so I found the fuel can, but I didn't really know where to, I couldn't see what I was doing, and they didn't leave me a torch or anything, so I lit this match thinking, and it blew up, and the all awning went and everything. So it was a bit of a surprise when they got back from Louth.
How old were you?
I was about 13. Yeah, and obviously Campbell as well. It was crazy. They'd send me down with a 750 to Scrutineering in the olden days. It was like a gravel road coming back up, and I'd be pushing it half a ton, it felt like, and I'd slip and drop it, and you know what I mean. I was always getting a belt by somebody.
So when you were 13, your dad was racing like sort of British Championship or club racing, or
no? Mal had stopped by that time, Chrissy. Sorry, and Ron had taken over, and Ron was flying. He was riding everything: 250s, 350s, 500s, 750s. It was amazing.
And back like in today's world, if you were say 13, there's loads of options of what you could race now, like on the little bikes, and you could race a 125 and stuff. Back then, you couldn't race until you were 16.
Yeah, to race in England, you had to be 16. So basically, how my career sort of started getting racing was my brother. My brother started when he was 16, riding for Newcastle, and it was Monday nights was their home meeting, and my brother used to like to have a sleep. So
which discipline's this?
Speedway.
I was about to say Newcastle. When did Newcastle set up a motorcycle racing team? So Newcastle Speedway got you right.
But it was one of them. It was just mental. I mean, it was like 2:00. My brother would turn up outside my school. I'd run out, jump in the car. He said, "I'll drive down to the motorway. Then I need to have a kip up to Newcastle," and he'd have a sleep, and I'd be 13, 14, driving up the A1 to Newcastle, and that was Monday nights. And then he'd do really well, and me and my mate would be together, and he'd basically, he'd get himself a nice girl after the meeting and kick us out, and we'd be on a park bench for an hour or so, and then come and pick us up. We'd be freezing to death. And
an hour? What an athlete!
Yeah. My brother was well famous for the size of his manhood. But Kenny and all his mates, the speciality, what they did was they pull into Gateshead services, yeah? So they pull in, and he had a Fiat Mirafiore, and he'd give me a tenner, and I had to go out and tank it up while they were there. And then basically, as I were coming out the door, they'd burn off. So it's 2 Speedway bikes on the trailer on the back. They'd go about just quick enough so I could run and get on the bike. And then they'd go down to, like, I don't know, next junction down, with me on the back of the trailer, all looking out the window, having a great laugh, and I'm just hanging on for grim death. That was pretty much Monday nights, and that's how I kind of got involved in racing, was through my brother becoming a top AMCA motocross rider, AMCA Supercross sort of champion, and then he went from there to Speedway, and then my father said, basically, do you want to have a go at this road racing? He told me dead straight, Chris. He said, if you're crap, forget it. But if you're good, I'll sponsor you all the way.
This is to your brother. Yeah. Sorry, this is to your brother saying this.
No, to me after. My brother was already an established star. He just picked up Speedway really quick. But as a motocross rider, he was brilliant. I had no experience ever on a racetrack.
So why did your brother swap from motocross to Speedway?
Yeah, that's a really key question. Apparently, it was all to do with money. There was no money in motocross.
No.
And Speedway, there was good money. I don't know what you got, £10 a point or £20 a point, and you got 10 points a night, and then you did 4 meetings a week. You could be at Glasgow one night, Halifax the next, Newcastle.
And for people that don't know Speedway, the only way you don't get a point in a particular heat is not coming last. So like third, you get 1 point, second, you get 2 points, and then you can imagine the winner gets 3. So you can imagine making a bit of money that way. It's in 12 heats a night normally, isn't it? So
do you know when you were, say, like that sort of age, 13, 14, and your brother was doing really well in Speedway, but your dad also had your road racing team. Back then, were you sort of split thinking, I could go and do Speedway or I could do road racing, or were you just single focus?
I never really had any focus. I used to just play out on the fields on my bikes all day, all night. I couldn't get enough. There was another kid who, my dad's best mate, he got a bike exactly the same. We got XR75s, and he'd turn up once a month, every 2 months. I was out every day. I just couldn't get enough.
Yeah.
So my dad just said, let's go. Do you want to go road racing? And he took me to Cadwell every Thursday.
At this sort of age, do you know when you were, so like before you got racing, did you see a lot of your dad like through the week? And so, because you lived with your mum back then, didn't you?
Yeah, not until probably about 13, 14, 15, I started to see more of him and start going to the races. Before that, as a kid, I didn't really see a great deal of him. I was kind of really quiet, shy kid. My brother was all, loud and proud, and I was completely the opposite. And I was a bit scared of him, to be honest. So it was, obviously we got onto, as I got into a teenager, going to the races, my dad took me to Imola, and then we went to Paul Ricard, and we went a few Grand Prix, and my dad did Daytona with Ron. It was pretty much full on proper effort to try and beat Sheen. Barry was a great guy, and my dad wanted to beat him, and every meeting at Cadwell Park, he bet him 500 quid that Ron would beat him, and he never did. And I've got a picture of my dad actually giving him the wedge out, which is pretty funny.
I'm gonna have to see that. There you go, son.
So when you were 16, obviously that was the entry level into road racing back then. Who was, obviously your goal was to be the best of the up and coming, like the 16-year-olds. Was there any other sort of competition around that sort of age?
It was difficult because in 1980, when I became 16, my birthday's just gone in August the 19th. So I missed the whole year practically to August. So my dad went, I'm sure he went to America or somewhere with Ron racing. And Eric Sunderland, a very well-known club racer, he took me to my first meeting. And there was a guy called Chris Kingsland who sold all the spares. Well, thank God. I think he must have made a few grand that day from us. I turned up at Cadwell when I was 16. Brand new bike. Didn't really think about it, really. It weren't like, oh, I've got a brand new bike and I'm whatever. I was just a rough and tough street kid, really, because I'd lived with my mum in not a council house, so in a semi. And I turned up. That's just kind of what we did. So I didn't really, it was only older people and competitors who couldn't believe what I was doing. Mm-hmm. But I didn't really, it's only as an older man I realised, Jesus, yeah, we turned up with this bike, that bike and whatever. So I crashed 3 times in one day. By the end of the meeting, I got a flat, half a tank, half a seat, no fairing, went out for the race with no fairing, and the bike looked like it had, it looked like it had done about 10 seasons.
What was your mindset at that point? It's interesting. Like you say, you've gone from the council element, like, growing up with your mum, and it's a bit like brand new bike, essentially like trashed. What was your mindset at that point? Shit, I can't, the money element. Were you fearful of that, or thought, where was your mind?
Well, unfortunately, when it's pretty sad, but when, God, I can't speak. Oh God, it's difficult to say. When I was 15, my mum killed herself.
Right.
And I had to go and live with my dad. So it's kind of a really.
You're setting me off now.
Yeah. It just was crazy to go from, I'm just a kid, goes to school, walks to school, comes home, plays tig, puts bangers in your letterbox, knocks on your door, runs, gets smacked by the vicar for being a cheeky twat, and the next minute I'm living on a 80-acre farm with buffaloes, cows, driving tractors, have a helicopter landing pad, and driving Mercs and BMs and all these types of things. And so it kind of, I can't even explain to you. Yeah.
It's a total flip.
Yeah.
Wow. You've gone from a boy and you've unfortunately become a man incredibly quickly in a different circumstance that what you're growing up with. That is unimaginable, to be blunt, you know.
And when you first started racing, obviously you would have known that your dad had the financial backing for, like, if you were succeeding on track, there was the goal to, like, follow in Ron's footsteps back then. It's a difficult one with you'll see a lot of parents in the paddock, and it's the kind of they're split in half, if you like, because half of most dads are desperate to see their son succeed, or daughters, but the other half of them is the parent, and the sort of terrified that they're going to hurt themselves and all of that sort of stuff. So lots of times, I don't know what it's like for your dad, but it's like they kind of want to see you do well, but as long as they're safe, sort of thing. Did you feel back then, did you feel like you just had to get results to then get up the ladder? And like, I get the feeling from, say, like reading your book and whatever, that you weren't too bothered about crashing and hurting yourself, but you wanted to get out and like just dominate.
Well, the thing is, I only ever went to Cadwell, so I didn't really have any experience apart from going around the Cadwell practice track. So where you've got the bus stop chicane now is where the airpin was, but the racetrack was 100 metres down at the bottom of the mountain. So when I was going around the training track on Thursdays, there wasn't many people there, and I become really quick. But once I turned up for the race, basically the races, it's a different track, and you're coming on a start line where there's probably 5, 6 on each row, and you look to your left and there's a man who looks like he's about 58, and you look to your right and he's got a beard and one eye. And you're absolutely shitting yourself because you're now in a man's world, and you're a kid, and it was pretty intimidating, and it took me a little bit to get going. And the fastest kid on the block really around Cadwell's John Seidel. A kid called John Seidel used to win 6 races on a Saturday and 6 on a Sunday. As I started to develop and get into the top 5, they then became a kid who was the main standout guy, and he was the kid I was going to have to beat week in, week out, which, to be honest, I did really. And that was a guy called Mark Phillips, Captain Mark Phillips, who was a British champion.
And he was the sort of target back then?
I wouldn't say he was a target, but he was the kid who was pushing me and, you know, giving you a run for your money once I got to that level. And then you kind of start going to different tracks, and then your results and everything's a bit different because you don't know where you're going. And
do you know, back, I guess it might be difficult to sort of get back in that headspace of that age, but were you desperate to succeed sort of for yourself, or did you feel like you would sort of you knew how important it was to your dad and like how much he wanted you to be successful? Or did you just like love the fame and what was like your main what was your main drive back then?
Well, because I started I had so many crashes. My dad took me to one side and said, "That's it, we're knocking it on the head." That was it. He said, "If you don't stop that, we're packing it in." So I then did calm down and start to get results and to sort of learn the trade more and enjoy. And it's kind of bizarre because my dad used to just, for the first 2 years, left me to it. He seemed to know that there was a period. It's like I've had several people in the last couple of years to train that have got no track experience, no bike experience, and are untrainable due to the lack of experience. So it's completely pointless. And that's what my dad did with me. He knew that I needed to spend time to learn the game, figure out things, and develop some experience and expertise. And then after that, as I came into sort of 82, 83 and on, he just would move me around a little bit, just a little bit deeper, a little bit, you're going in too deep, and just more guidance, a bit like what I do, really. I don't really, when we work together, Chrissy, as you know, I don't tell you what to do. I just might move you around a little bit, give you a little bit of things to think about, and small little increments to improve our performances.
Mm-hmm. Class.
No, I'm soaking this in like a sponge. Carry on. No, you crack on, lads.
So, what was the first time you went abroad and like to Grand Prix?
One of my first trips was as a young kid. I went to Paul Ricard, and I was in the paddock, and I was coming up and down. You could not get me off a motorbike. I mean, I would be on a bike all day, up and down, up and down. So I was going up and down the paddock in Paul Ricard. I think it was the French Grand Prix, and a guy, I must have drove him crazy, and he put a orange nylon rope across the road to stop me, and it was blazing hot and I didn't see it, and I ran straight through it, and it nearly decapitated me. I've got the scar there, and all my teeth was knocked out. And I was in hospital for about a week in France.
So was this like you were riding up and down as a competitor getting ready to be on track, or was just a kid spectating?
No, I was just a kid. I was going up and down the paddock on my TY80, up and down, having a great time.
And then someone clotheslined you?
Yeah, it is completely.
Have you found out to this day who that was?
No, never.
Oh, I hope they're listening.
No, but honestly,
evil
it was.
Son of a...
I had rope burns all down here, and I had stitches there. My teeth was gone. It was pretty bad. But hey, just keep going, don't you? You know what I mean?
So you've gone from Cadwell, the practice track, and then you've met your first arch nemesis. There's a question, Chrissy. Who was your your first competitor? You know when you met? What was his name again? Sorry,
John Seidel.
That was
Mark Phillips. Yeah.
Mark Phillips. So who was mine? Was Scott Campbell from Northumberland. Who was yours?
Mine was Callum Bay.
There we are. You see, you've gone from that point. You've seeked your first proper rabbit and went, I need to beat you one day, and you've gone to that point. So, how many years were you at that level to then going to your first GP, not as a spectator, as a competitor? What was the time gap between that?
Just over 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah,
That is incredible.
Just short of 2.5 years from my first ever race to winning a MotoGP. Yeah.
What? Who? So you've gone for. Let's. I keep going back to this Cadwell situation. Whose decision was it to go right? We're leaving here. We're going to MotoGP.
I didn't really have any choice. My dad controlled everything. He was obviously he was a bit like Paul Bird. He was the king of BSB at the time. Very popular. What happened was so I started at the end of 1980. I went club racing a little bit end of 80, not many races end of season. Did a full year in 81. 82 I start to do the nationals, which was it was like club racing, nationals, internationals. But all the Grand Prix stars did nationals. So I went in about March, April to a national at Donington, and I got hammered. I finished about 10th. But them guys were only racing.
That's not a hammering, by the way. But I'm just saying that out loud. But carry on. Yeah, I know what you mean, though.
Well, people like Charlie Williams, Steve Tonkin, Tony Ed, all these people who've been in the top 3 or 4 in Grand Prix and won. And I spent 6 months in England, and I was racing 2 meetings every weekend. I'm a big person that likes to compound. So let's get as much. We can get 5 years racing in 6 months if we're out 2 tracks a week and we're really banging in the hours. But you got to have some money to do that. And I understand not everybody can. I was fortunate.
Yeah.
So 1982, I got hammered by all the national guys. But then I was banging out races, 12 a weekend. Starts, races, laps, blah, blah, blah. And they're racing Grand Prix, your MotoGP, you got a week off, MotoGP, you got a month off, and them days it was more gaps than now. So they all came back at the end of 82 for an international at Donington. And the new world champion, Jean-Louis Trenard, and all the world championship people came to Donington for an international where, they used to pay quite a reasonable amount of money. And I won all the races. I won 3 out of 3. So suddenly I just I can't say to you how I did it. I have no idea. I had a gearbox break, a top end seizure during the practice on the Saturday, and my mechanic Doug Alton went back to the CCM factory, which is still in Bolton, and rebuilt me an engine overnight and brought it back to Donington and fitted it, so he didn't sleep all night. And I went out and won 2 races on that bike and one on my 350, and then that was it. It was just kind of a bit sensational, and then I was getting thrown in the Grand Prix.
Wow! Did
Outstanding.
do you know
make that sound so nonchalant? Yeah.
Do you know from not spending a great deal of time with your dad through your youth, did you feel like, do you know, when you started getting success on track, did you feel like you became closer?
I never really felt close to my dad, but I've always felt really intimidated and fearful. You know, so he was just that type of person, really. And so I don't know. I've always had this thing that I wish he loved me, and I wish he would have told me that he loved me, and I wish he would have rang me up in my life, but he never did. So it's always sorry, sort of sidetracking a bit, but it's always a little bit where I don't know. Maybe I crave that love because I've not had that love, because my mum was in a wheelchair. You know, my mum was a beautiful hairdresser, and she had a car crash. My little brother died in that crash, which is just, he was 4, and my mum ended up in a wheelchair. And then, you know, 5 or 6 years after that, she took her own life when I was 15. And so it's been really difficult. You know, I suppose maybe back in them days I'd had some mental health issues, but nobody really knew anything about that.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel the world's like things are much better in the world with that now, where people can sort of openly talk about? Do you feel like we've kind of made progress in that respect?
Oh, massive! I mean, you know, again with mental health. I mean, if you know, you would have said, you know, Alan Carter. If anybody said about me back in my day, they'd say, God, he was super confident, he was super quick, he would blah blah blah, and it just was natural, and it was. So to suffer from mental health, before I suffered from mental health, I would have said, that's a load of nonsense, get a grip, what's wrong with you, blah blah blah. But actually, you know, being sort of 10, 15 years in with that, with tragedies and post-traumatic stress disorder, it's really, really difficult. I honestly, the first time I went to a race meeting was 2017 to coach Ryan, and Ryan Vickers, a lovely kid, and I stopped twice on the way there. I couldn't do it. I couldn't go through with it.
Why?
I don't know. I just had to stop the car, and don't know.
But I bet you're pleased. I bet you're pleased you didn't stop anyway, because you went on and took Ryan from. Back then he just came up from CB500s, I think, like 1 year or whatever. Was a bit sort of ropey around the edges, and went on to absolutely dominate the Superstock 600 Championship, and it was like probably the most dominant display really in 600s that we've seen in recent times. But so yeah, good memories, eh?
Oh, amazing! I mean, we did. You know, I did tell Fred Clark, I said, we will win this year. That's 2017. We will win. We will win before the end of the year.
Save the best to last as well.
And we went 3-2-1. So we were third at third at Silverstone, second at Alton. And the second at Alton, we was ready to take it to Brad Jones. Brad Jones is probably the best kid I've seen round Alton Park on a stock 6, and a lovely guy. But I thought we had the measure of him. I got Ryan in the right place, and then it poured down overnight. And Brad was amazing that day. So was Ryan. Ryan gave him a good run, but Brad just had the edge, so we got second. And then we went to Brands Hatch and we won, and Ryan took the lead on the last lap, and it was one heck of a last lap. You know, Brad passed him back into paddock, and Tom Neve was up the inside into Druids, and
Jordan Gilbert was in that.
Yeah, and the guy who was 5th or 6th,
George Stanley.
set the fastest lap.
It's mad. Do you know, out of everyone I know, I would say, do you know, when people go on like mastermind and things like that. You have like a chosen subject.
Yeah.
Superstock 600, National Superstock 600 is like your baby, really, isn't it? Like, you know, like if you said any sort of lap, you would know what like a good lap time is and who's did it and what year and that sort of thing. It's quite often to get sort of carried away, especially like say if someone wins out the blue, but then I can say to Alan, is like, was that impressive? And sometimes he'll say, oh yeah, they're on lap record, the things. Sometimes I'll see someone win and I'll say, oh, it's impressive, and he'll go, shite, like the 1.5 off the fat, like so and so's lap like 3 years ago, and it is true, because whenever you say like it's not actually that impressive, they then go step up to the next level and are kind of mediocre, where if you point someone out that has done something, they often go. So it's
So you're the bookie's favourite, is that what you're saying? So
you know your eggs, don't you?
The thing is about the Stock 600, what I love about that is it's a bit like 250s. It's high tempo, you've got to go in deep, keep the speed and bang the power on. I mean, Max Cook, I mean, he's smashing it out the park. I mean, to watch him on track, the kid's phenomenal. You know, I've been trying to help Louis Valioli beat him, but obviously a couple of issues. Louis rode fabulous at Brands, beat him. He did exactly what I told him to do, and it was fabulous.
He's having a great season, Louis.
Yeah, he's a nice kid.
Yeah.
Can you see any British hopes for MotoGP at the moment? You don't have to name names, you know what I mean? You know, when people say this in years, you know, like hindsight's a wonderful thing, and they're going, I knew all the time that lad was going to be like the next British hope. Can you see that at the moment?
Well, when in 2007, 2018, I saw a kid who didn't have much sponsorship. He was struggling to get a bike, and I watched him around Silverstone, and that was Rory Skinner. And for a 16-year-old boy to go out there and put the bike on pole position against my rider who won 6 or 7 on the bounce, and it was a Kawasaki, was absolutely phenomenal. The only thing that I dislike about our sport is the English, how we enrich talent. You know, you look at lots of people just disappear. Your Keith Farmers, your Twymans, you know, your Josh Elliott's. These are quick people, really quick people. You know, Luke Jones, you know, it was only 2017. He was down in Spain going quicker than Tara McKenzie. He had a practice crash, and then since then he's just, you know, hurt his hand really badly. But, you know, there's a lot of fabulous people. But a standout one, it's got to be Rory. I'm a big fan of Storm Stacey. I think that Storm's got lots of potential. I like the look of this Max Cook. I really do. I like the look of him on track. It's a bit, you know, I've been following another kid as well for a few years, and that's Johnny Garnes.
Yeah.
And it just makes me chuckle because he comes steaming past out, you know, comes out the old aping up the hill and passes 5 and takes the lead, and then he comes down the back straight and gets past, and he's back, and it's just tiny little kid. I think we've got more than one. There's lots of people there with potential. I've always said I'd love to run my own team because.
What could I just ask? What's your thoughts on Casey O'Gorman? He's another one around that sort of Johnny age who's been tipped for the top.
It's very, 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 very difficult subject because things go wrong.
I'm actually over the moon you've answered this question the way you have, solely because it's so easy just to rack off a load of names, and you found it difficult for the right reason, that you need lady luck in this sport, don't you?
Oh,
you know, things just falling in the right
back in the 80s, Dom, we had a guy called Norman, right? Norman Brown, and Norman was a good-looking lad from Ireland. He was super fast, and he lost his life, and that's why I think for me it's best to get the maximum out of each individual. So if I get a guy who's 20th and I can get him in the top 10, that's like him winning the MotoGP. So, for example, at Cadwell, Eugene finished 4th. I thought that was a top result. You know what I mean? Absolutely. Eugene McManus, 4th place, Cadwell Park, top result.
Pretty super sport, I think,
yeah. And same for him when he got 3rd at Knockhill. I'm just saying it's getting the maximum out of each individual and enjoying the moment. It's all right. Oh, we'll be in superbikes or we'll be in MotoGP, but hang on, let's enjoy today. You know when. Well, you know, Chrissy, when we started working together, you know, we started working together in 19, and you know, I could see from 2018 at Cadwell. I bet you at Cadwell in the bar. I don't know why we were both in the bar.
You in a bar?
Yeah.
You in a bar? No, I'm joking.
We were both in the bar and we both didn't drink, so it was a bit bizarre.
You don't drink either?
No, not often.
I'm feeling really the outcast. The more people we get on this show, the more... Where's Piggy? Where's Piggy?
But we did, didn't we, Chrissy? We met there, and then I had to watch you, and then I had to say, oh, I got, you know, everybody says this kid's good and that kid's good, and I thought, I'll tell you who's good and who's not, because my eyes don't lie. So I watched you into turn one at Cadwell, and you was phenomenal on that mission bike, on Russ's bike, and that was great. And then it wasn't, you know, the following year, we just, by default, we just got together and we started working, and I could see that you were going to win. I knew you were going to win. I just knew I would make you a winner, and we did, didn't we? We won a race, and we could have won two, and you know, we won the championship, and that's something that, you know, we can always look back on.
Yeah, good.
And more to come. And I tell you what, speaking of winning, let's go back to 1983. And this win, the hat trick, 2 wins, was it? One win.
Yeah.
So here we go. This is why I'm so off track. Let's talk about this baby. So that was 83. So you've been racing 2 years at this point.
Can a question I've on this?
That's a great noise, by the way. Sorry, that's fully silver. That bad lad.
Why did you go into 250s at that age? Why weren't you doing 125s?
The first bike I ever raced was a 350 and a 250. It's just my dad. That's what people couldn't understand when I went racing. People was like, I've got a LC or an RD 400, or I've got a 125, or I've got a Kreidler 80. My dad just sent me out on 250s and 350s, and so there's no reason. It's just once I'd rode them, I weren't going to ride a 125, would I? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's like we had a few in the garage, on the farm, in the workshop. We had a couple. I used to take it around the block on the moors. I made my own little track like the TT. Just have a quick razz around there. But
do you know when you went out and say when you won this Grand Prix, and obviously at the time your brother was setting the world on fire with Speedway, did you ever feel like your brother wanted to be doing what you were doing on the tarmac, or do you think he was happy doing like being top dog in Speedway?
I think he was well established. He was when I was 15, he'd come and do all the practices. Yeah, so he'd come to Cadwell every sporadic, miss a meeting, then do 3, come test and beat me. But what people didn't really understand was I was 15 and he was 18 and a half. I'm still a boy and he's a man. Once I got to 17, just 18, he never come once then. Because all I wanted to do was totally destroy him. Absolutely annihilate him. But he wouldn't come. And he knew, because he knew that I was going to do him in. Mm-hmm. So that gave me a lot of satisfaction. But do you remember when Shaky did that programme with Whit? And he had him on TV and he got his trophy? You know, he basically what he did, he got his trophy like that, and he said, yes, I've won 2 rounds of the World Championship at Brands Hatch, yeah? Anyway, I sent him a message, so that's shite. I said, look at this baby. You know what I mean? This is where the real men race. You know what I mean? If you want to be the best in the world, you've got to be MotoGP.
Yeah, there's not many people win Grand Prix like from, there just isn't, is there?
No, there's not.
I finished second. I finished 4th 5 times, I think, and I've been 10 metres behind the leader. Mm-hmm. I never ever stood on the rostrum again, and I've led them. I've broke down. I've had tyres shred. Engines blow.
Was the one at Silverstone where you were leading by like half a lap or something?
Yeah.
In the wet.
13 seconds, 1985. I crashed at the end of the Hanger Straight, took 2 rows of catch fence. If you hit the post, you were dead. You were going to die because you had a bail on the post. But if you hit it, you were pretty much dead. But I went straight through the catch fence in between the posts, got the bike up. I got half a brake lever, no footrest, pulled it out, and I managed to finish 7th, which obviously if you're going to win it, seven's pretty crap, isn't it, really? But
Aye.
And if you, go on.
go on.
Sorry, no. Is that like there's a cracking YouTube clip, right? You talk about, if you're going to hit a post, you know what's coming to you.
Yeah.
Is that that race where you clock the marshal? By the way, sorry,
Do you know what happened? I'll tell you what happened. Me and obviously my dad and my brother and our relationship with our father, it was like Marmite. We was out having fish and chips, fillet steak, best buddies. Oh, we all hated each other. It just, not so much me and my brother, but it was like my dad was best mates with Kenny, or he fell out with him and he's best mates with me. And
right.
it just went round and round in circles. So in 1986, I said to my dad, please come to Spa, to the Belgium Grand Prix. I'm going to win it. And the only reason I knew I was going to win it was because, it was downhill into Eau Rouge.
So, why down it? Why the concept of going downhill? I'm going to win it.
I couldn't start the bike. I could not start the Cobas. It fired at 382 pistons, top dead centre. I was about 60 kilos. I dropped the clutch. It just locked the back end up. But I knew down that hill, I'm not going to swear, but I knew it couldn't lock up, and it would. You know what I mean? And I'd get a good start. And I just knew I was going to win it. And so what happened was it absolutely poured it down race day. And I got into second place behind the leader. And my good friend Donny McLeod finished third in that race.
That's a fantastic name, by the way.
In fact, he might have finished second, actually. I think he finished second in the MotoGP. Great guy, Donny from Scotland. And anyway, my bike went on, it started to misfire. All the water got into the electrics. And I was right on the leader, right on him. I thought, I'm not going to pass him. If I pass him, I'm going to crash. I'm just going to sit on him, suss him out, follow him. Cito Pons, who runs the MotoGP 2 team. And my bike went on to 1.5 cylinders and I lost all the power. And my dad was there and I was gutted. So when I went to Silverstone, where obviously what you're talking about, Dom, is where I punched the marshal. There was a month break and I was so excited. I was so excited. I'm going to win the British Grand Prix. I'm going to win it. The Cobas is all top speed. It's the old track. It's flat out, 4th, 5th, 6th gear corners. I went out in free practice 1, pole position. I thought, we're on it.
I'm having it.
I goes out in the first qualifier into Copse, the first corner, and it seized up and threw me off. Big crash. And, it doesn't matter how old you are or how much experience you've got. They do, you take a bit of a battering and it just, it unsettled me for the week. And then, obviously, race day, it poured it down again. And the thing is with the Cobas, the Spanish team, is they used to have 2 crates of Rioja wine about 1 o'clock. So everything was great with the bike until then. And then the clutch lever would fall off, the clutch would fall off, the wheel would fall off, or I'd fall off. It was just nuts. And in that Grand Prix, the one where I punched the marshal 86, about 3 laps in, the ref counter stuck at 7,000. And in them days, you didn't have any lights or bleepers or nothing. The rev counter was, 12,500. You was changing gear. You was like, bop, bop, bop. And it's just stuck at 7. So I'm using my head trying to but it's just not perfect. And then I'm fighting with Dominic Saron, my mate from France, and I tried to beat him, and last lap I crashed. I sided it. It was my fault. Wanted to get back on, finish the race, and the marshal wouldn't let me. So I took a big haymaker swing for him. By
the way, can we just clarify? That's a no-go. Yeah. And no marshals, no race, and we're not condoning it, but my God, it is funny.
Did you ever get to meet that marshal afterwards?
Yeah.
I've never met him, but I do feel sorry. But
well, I'm glad you said that. Come in, Toby. He's been hiding around the corner for ages.
It's bizarre because every meeting I meet some fan or some person that says, "Do you know that marshal is here?" They do.
Do they?
All the time. Yeah, I say, tell him I'm going to give him another one.
but like you say, that it's the adrenaline dump and everything like that. It's obviously I must condone it's a no-go, but my God, the fact that someone filmed it was like, I bet you were just thinking, like, you know, when you have a cock up moment and you go, no one film it. Please tell me no one saw that. That just boof. Hey, I tell you what, if bike racing wasn't your thing, you'd be a cracking boxer, mind. I'm telling you that much.
And so going from that year with winning the French Grand Prix, you then went on to do a few years as a privateer in effectively what is now Moto 2, so the 250 Grand Prix, and just like sort of in a van, you and a few mates basically, and going all around the world. Was that backing from the guy who owned Donington Park?
Yeah, Tom Wheatcroft. Yeah, what we did is we did the 83 season. It was it just ended up being a disaster. I was sort of kind of pretty hot favourite to win the World Championship. I'd not even been there, I'd been to a track, and round one the chain snapped. Round one the chain snapped. I was 5th place. Round 2 I won. Round 3 the world champion crashed in front of me. I ran his bike over. And then I just started crashing my brains out. I mean, you know, a very technical track like Assen. Never, you know, you got to remember, I turn up on a Thursday. I've never seen Assen. I'm just an 18-year-old sort of bum, really, and turned up at Assen, put it on the second row, 5th fastest in practice. You know, I mean, it's pretty sensational.
You know, in that time period, how many privateer teams like yourself were in that paddock at that point?
There'd be about 55 to 60 entrants for 36 positions, and if you didn't qualify on Saturday, you were packing your stuff up and going home.
Because like you and like the Clive Paget, we are yet to have Clive Paget on the show, but like him and his brothers had a similar story in not to your story, but like the fact that they turned up at GPs and went. So how many were there of you in that category? You know,
yeah, 55 to 65 entrants.
Oh no, but I meant like there would have been the factory lads,
no,
you know,
loads.
like, supported. Like, that's incredible.
50 people.
Wow.
And all of them, I mean, one of the fastest guys I've ever raced in my life on a certain track is Mario Radomir. Mario Radomir, the South African, he's a friend of mine now, I call him the king of Kailami. Nobody got near him. Freddie Spencer, anybody. I mean, this guy was phenomenal, and he thought the same as what I thought. I've whooped you all at Donington, I'll do you all everywhere as well. And Mario came over and really struggled. You know, it's you know what racing is like, guys. It's, you know, it's really difficult. You need a lot of luck. You need a lot of luck. I mean, some of the things that me and Chrissy's done with tyre choices. Chrissy's going to go with this tyre. I said, no, don't do this, and he's done it, and bingo.
It's just I'm absolutely like, you know, at the beginning of the year. So the 83 year, you moved on, you went to the privateer element, you know, you and your mates. You know, what was that conversation like at the beginning of the year where you just sat in a room, just went, wait, you know, what's your plans for the year? No, your missus kicked out the house. I've got just the job for you, son. Do you want to get in the van and we're going to go to Belgium Spa, grab your little brother, because he's a little shit and he can talk and change tyres. Was that pretty much the crack of it?
Well, we had to do what we had to do. I mean, 85 was a bit crazy. You know, so what happened even worse for me, so I become the youngest man ever to win a MotoGP in history in all classes. I'm the youngest kid in the paddock because you have to be 18 to have a license. So
So for an international license,
yes.
So you had a race license at 16, but you had to be 18 to have it international.
Yeah, FIM. Right. Yeah, if you want an FIM license, Dom, you had to be 18.
So is that changed now? Because for the FIM side of things,
yeah, it'd be like 13.
I think it's 16 for MotoGP now.
It's going up every year. Yeah, now you can be. Well, Scott Redden won when he was 15, and then I think there's been younger since then. Yes. But they are bumping the minimum age.
Okay, I was going to leave that question to the end of the pod. But do you agree with that ruling that the age should be high? Because when you started at 16, you know, that's where your capacity was. So you thought, I can only start at that age. Do you agree with an age change?
I don't like people getting hurt, Chrissy, like young kids. God, yeah. My father, Mal, he wanted me to race in Daytona when I was 17, and he reckoned I was good enough to win it, but they said I wasn't old enough to ride, so I didn't ride. So I never went to Daytona until I was in my late mid-20s, which sounds old for me. But so just going back to, you know, the question that you said, when in 1983, so I rode for Mitsui, and then they quit at the end of the year. So I kind of went from, imagine this, right, Dom, Chrissy, you've won the French Grand Prix, you're still the youngest kid in the paddock, and then I got approached by Kenny Roberts. So Kenny Roberts, obviously, he was the top man in the world of MotoGP, you know, the FIM World Championship, and Kenny's retiring, and he asked me, he said he was setting a new team up for the following year, 1984, and asked me if I would be in that team. And then he said, I want to meet you in London. I'll bring the other geezer around, who was Wayne Rainey.
Wow.
Did you go to that meeting with your dad as like your manager?
Yeah.
And can you remember that day like quite vividly?
Yeah.
It must be a hell of a thing.
I went down there, and there's these two sort of what we would class as old geezers. That's Kenny Roberts and my dad. And they were doing all the talking. Wayne Rainey looked bored. I looked bored. We didn't really speak or say much, and they did all the talking.
So not starstruck one bit kind of thing.
Do you know back then did your dad have to pay for you to be in that team, or?
No. They paid me $25,000.
It's mad that. Yes. And back then,
Kenny paid me $25,000 to be in the team, and he rang me up and he said, I don't want your dad to be involved afterwards. And that's when I really choked and panicked, and I wanted to run away.
How
from the team.
How did you manage that?
I didn't manage it. I just absolutely crapped myself. And
no, sorry. So like after the meeting when Kenny said so did you not speak to your dad about that and you just didn't mention it?
Well, no, what happened was we had the meeting, we drove to London and back in the day, and I got back home and everything was fine. You know, my dad was my coach, my manager. Kenny, I was in the team. This blonde-haired kid, Wayne Rainey, was going to be in the team. About 3 weeks after, I got a phone call saying that he wanted me in his team, but he didn't want my dad to have anything to do with it, which was disarming me. But then I heard from a very nice guy in South Africa that he was already grooming Wayne Rainey, that I wasn't important, that he was grooming this kid called Wayne Rainey for superstardom. I only found that out years after. So that was pretty annoying.
Do you know, just using that word, grooming word, I'm thinking, what are you going to say?
No. Well, you know.
The plot thickens in the podcast. No. Jesus wept. Even I held my breath there, Chris. I'm like, let it roll. Let it roll.
Honestly, Kenny used to absolutely take the mickey out of Wayne all the time. He used to call him gay, queer, puff, everything. It was pretty bad, really, at one point.
Kenny Roberts, this is to Wayne Rainey.
Yeah, he never bothered me, but really sort of ripped into Wayne a lot for no reason.
Why do you think he did that?
I don't know. Wayne's a lovely guy. You know, Wayne Rainey's one of the nicest guys you could ever meet. So I never told my dad anything. I choked, and that's where one of my biggest regrets in my life. And then Kenny rang me and said, we want you to come to America. You need to come and train on the ranch with me, Eddie and Wayne. And that's when I said that I was too busy, that I needed to recuperate, relax, and don't worry about me. I'll be good for South Africa. So I never went.
Why didn't you go?
I didn't want to go. I wanted to stay at home and have some fun and go out drinking and, spend some time with the girls.
Okay. Until the girl comment, I was about to ask, do you regret that decision? But no. Looking back, do you
regret?
No, regret's a strong word. But I meant
regret. I feel like I need a triple brandy every night when I think about it.
That is the most honest answer on this podcast that's ever been.
I thought, I can't even. I want to swear.
You can't on this show. This is God's country. You do whatever
you dumb bastard. I thought. I couldn't believe I did that. And then even to make it worse, honestly, it's just nuts. People say to me all the time, do you know who you are? And I go, I don't even answer it. They go, you don't, do you? And anyway, Agostini rang me up and he says to me, will you come and race for me?
Shut up, man.
Yeah, he did. And I said, no. And that's another...
Brandy moment.
Yeah.
Why did you refuse Agostini?
Well, basically at the end of '86, obviously the tragedies with my brother, dying and all that happened with Kenny. He was my best mate, my manager, my friend, my idol, and I lost him. And I went from number 7 in the world. I was 12, 9, 7 in the world, 3 years on the trot, going towards winning the world championship and getting there. Obviously learning as we're going along. And then I went to 17th in the world through a lot of the trauma and things. And for the following season, 1987, I didn't have a ride. I was 21 years old. I was out of Grand Prix, MotoGP, washed up. Nobody wanted me.
And that was that the end of racing for you at that point?
Well, it was a difficult situation. And then I got Murawaki, the engineering company in Japan, rang me and said, would you like to come and do the Japanese Grand Prix on our 250? We've got full factory HRC backing engines. So I flew out there and they looked after me fabulous. The only thing was when I got there, it was 1987, not 1977, and I noticed that the bike was a twin shock. So it was a little bit dated and didn't handle very well, unfortunately. It was very quick down the straights, but it didn't go around the corners.
Wow.
And there's another steep learning curve. So at that point, so you did that. So what happened? So you hopped on this bike, wouldn't go around corners. Yeah. What actually happened in that race? You just thought...
Well, it was unbelievable. I managed... What I did is that the bike was terrible, and then I'd say, right, do this, and they changed all the bike. I went to sleep, got back up, and they changed it all back. And that's
do you know why?
No, that's just their philosophy. No work, this will not work. So I thought, okay. After a couple of days, I got fed up of it, so I just went with what they said. And then on race day, it poured it down. And I came from about 23rd or something up to 3rd place, looking like a rostrum crashed. Spoon curve, famous. Neil Mackenzie crashed there when he was on pole position. Neil was on pole for HB cigarettes, Spencer's teammate. Banged it on pole position.
There was a massive crash in the Suzuki hour at Spoon Curve this year on the opening lap. Imagine of an 8-hour race. Yeah. It was 2 Japanese riders as well. So it's basically like could be the biggest moment of the life, really. The first lap of the 8-hour, and one of them just took the other one out and huge crash. But yeah, I know you. So after the Grand Prix era, as that came to a close, I know there was an era of racing in British Championship and also in America. Yeah. What came first?
Well, what happened, just going back to Dom's question, so the Agostini question, just to answer that, what happened after that race in Japan, 1987, I think if I would have got top 3, I was in 3rd place. Believe it or not, the 1-2 crashed as well, and I crashed. The guy who was in 4th place won the Grand Prix. So we all crashed out. It was just one of them things. I crashed first, I think, then second went and first. And so after that, I didn't have a ride. And Agostini was running the Marlboro Yamaha team, and his rider had broke his leg. But just before he rang me, a guy called Bob McLean, who was a big American racing guy, he sponsored Gary McCoy on the Red Bull. Bob rang me up and said, would you like to come and do a year in America? We've missed round 1 at Daytona. We can go for round 2, get your brand new RS250 Honda. You'll be teammates with a 4-times world champion Colt Ballington. We'll pay all your flights, hotels, food, everything, and you keep all your prize money. So suddenly I was back in business.
And living over in the States, whereabouts were you based?
I was based in Connecticut then, but Bob used to send limousines to pick me up at JFK. So I'd fly into JFK and limousine pick me up, and everything was good. And
living the dream.
Yeah.
You know, at that point in your life, at that exact point when you thought, look, this has gone, the bike's not very good, everything's gone wrong at that exact point. What was plan B in your mind? Was it literally...
I nearly said top myself, but I can't say that. No, I don't know. Sorry, go on.
No. It's no. If that is your honest answer, that's more vet. It's interesting because you've gone. It's great because when you sit there and you go, I'm going to win this race, and you back up, and it's either win it or bin it, and that strong attitude of going, this is going to happen. It's just interesting to see when it's not going right, and a lot of riders, if you're not Rossi, a lot of riders are going to go through what you've gone through. Yeah. And it's interesting to think when tits have gone to turn-ups and you stand there, you're going, in your experience, were you stand there going, something will come along? Or was it, this is the end? And, you know, what at that point, it's a very difficult situation to be in at that point. And where were you?
Well, obviously, end of 86, I've no ride. I get this one-off ride in the Japanese Grand Prix.
Yep.
Round 1 of the championship. All of a sudden, I'm on the rostrum. I'm third at the worst, and I crashed.
Yeah.
So it's like 1 minute, I get a top 3. You know, Honda's going to come in with something. They're not going to leave me high and dry.
Yeah.
Murawaki will come to Europe or something. But so I did crash. I lost the front end. I never lose the front end. I'm a big eyesight guy. You know, I'm on the gas.
If I'm gonna crash, it's over the roof.
Absolute. I'm gonna land in the grandstand, mate. I don't lose the front end, never. I'm ask anybody who race me. Yeah, I could run it in deep, never lost the front end, on the gas hard, and I lost the front end there. So come home, it's back to square one. This is it. I'm just heartbroken.
Yep.
21 years of age, and this guy from America rings me up. It's like I didn't really have a chance to think about plan B. It was just like this was like a saviour, and he was a really nice guy, and he looked after me. And then I raced for him for the year. But just after I'd done the deal with him, when Agostini rang me, he said, "Look, my rider's broke his leg. You can ride the factory Yamaha, Marlboro Yamaha team, biggest team in the world, for 2 rounds. 2 rounds." And I just had to weigh it up. And I thought, well, do I do 2 rounds, 1, maybe 2, see how it goes if his rider's back, or do I do a full year in America? And to me, it was a no-brainer. I thought, I'm off to America.
Yeah.
Didn't even think about it.
And looking back, is that a regret?
Is that a triple Brandy moment?
Yeah. Absolutely, because you got to remember, guys, I didn't know what the tracks were like in America.
Yeah.
I mean, all the American tracks were like really bad, dangerous, narrow, Armco, all car orientated. Well, I didn't know that. I didn't know that till I got there. You know what I mean? So, but you can't. I think I met Ago in about 2012 at Mallory, and I said to him, "That's the biggest sort of thing that I regret in my whole life."
Right.
Not riding for you.
Mm. And then were you over in America for a few years?
I did 3 years, yeah.
So up to being about 24-year-old, and then back to the UK, racing. What sort of classes were you back then?
I did 3 years in America on 250s.
Yeah.
Same again. It was a bit of a mixed bag. I was on a Honda, and the next year a Yamaha, then the year after an Aprilia.
Yeah.
I came back and met Neil Tuxworth, and I always was a big fan of Neil's. And everybody seems to think that I don't like him and I hate him. I don't. I dislike some of the things that he did for me and the team at the time. But Neil was a top racer, 250, 350 and 70s, and I always was a big fan of his. And we met at the British Grand Prix, 1989, and we shook hands and did a deal, and I spent 3 years riding for Neil.
In British 250s. Yeah. At what point, I know you did a couple of World Superbike wildcards. When was that?
I did 1990, 91, 92 for Honda. 1990, to win the championship, I had to win the last round, and Steve Islop had to finish lower than 4th. This is bearing in mind I lent him my spare engine at round 1 so he could race, because he blew his engine up. And on that race, I won it, and I broke my leg 2 weeks before, and I still won it. And Steve was 5th, and on the last lap, 1 ran out of petrol and 2 crashed, and he finished 2nd to me.
And won the championship.
Yeah, but the final round, I had a 26-second lead. Crashed at McLean's, Coppice. I had 26-second lead, crashed at Coppice, got back on and still won. Wow. And I won it, yeah. The second place guy, as I got back on the track at Coppice, he was right there next. I was like, oh shit.
Were you mates with, I know you were teammates, but were you close friends with Steve Hislop, or did you not really get on?
No, not really, no. I really liked him, and then he just did a few things that wasn't very nice. And
Yeah.
I liked Steve and helped him a lot. And then 1991, when Honda sent 2 sets of factory magnesium carburetors to England, one for Steve and one for me, and Honda had promoted him to the number 1 in the team because he won the championship and me to number 2. And he said he wanted to try both sets of carburetors, and that I could have the ones that he didn't like. And this went on for months because he didn't want me to have a set. And then Neil got onto HRC in Japan, and they said, "What are you talking about? They're both the same. One's for Alan and one's for Steve." So that was kind of what was the thing that soured the relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, after I'd lent him my engine the year before.
Yeah. Aye. Mad. I know you went over to the Northwest 200 and you won over there. Was that your only introduction to road racing? Did you like think about going to Isle of Man TT, and did you look at any other races?
My first road race was when I was 18. I raced in Holland at a track called Ralta, and my dad thought it would be good for me to race there because it was a lot narrower than Assen. So if I went there,
Class.
I could then go from like Scarborough to the Silverstone. So I would go from a narrow track, and Assen would become wide, and it actually worked a treat. So I went to this little race and I qualified pole position. I couldn't start the bike.
Uphill.
No, I just couldn't start. It was flooded. They kept us on the line for ages.
You know what? The previous pod that we did, we were talking about how many tracks are uphill and downhill, and all I'm thinking about is track elevation now.
Right. So you did that when you were 18, and then you went off, did Grand Prix, and then racing in America. What year did you go to the Northwest 200?
1994. It was a strange thing. I'd retired by then. I won. I turned up in 1992 at Brand's final round of the year, and I was washed up, gone. I knew this was it. I didn't even really want to race.
And what age were you?
28.
That's nothing, is it?
And then Mackenzie turned up, Neil turned up, and I knew something was going on. I could just tell. I thought, what's he doing here? And then he jumped on Rob Mack's spare 250, and that was it. That just fired me up, and that was it. I was definitely going to win. And I qualified 9th, and we had a problem with the gearbox, and in the warm-up we fixed it, and I was second quickest. So I knew that I was second quickest on the grid, even though I was P9 in position. I knew I was in the money. Because what I've always told you, Chrissy, and everybody else, that the warm-up is a warm-up, but depending on where we are and the weather and situations with the bike setup, the warm-up can be a serious test session. So I knew this was a serious moment for me at that moment, and did the second fastest lap that weekend, and that put me in a good position to fight for the victory, which I won. I beat Neil. I just beat him over the line.
Was that your last proper race?
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't sign off with a win. Did you just know in your heart of hearts that had you lost the love of the sport, or did you just know that it was the right time to walk away?
Yeah, I think I'd just been doing it a long time, and I'd struggled financially and not really had the breaks that I felt like I should have got. Didn't want to be a grid filler. I wanted to be a winner, and I think there's a path in your career, your path. It's like a salmon, a fish swims against a current all its life, drops its eggs, and dies. And I felt like I've been swimming upstream all my life, and since I let go and let the current take me, everything's come together.
Mm-hmm. And after you walked away from racing, did you walk away because you knew like you had another job, or did you you went into business, didn't you? Back then, what business did you go into?
And this is 94, sorry.
Yeah,
94.
No, 92 ended in 92 because my one of my best friends, Tom Walker, he was the managing director of Heinck Erika, a fabulous German company. He said, "Why don't you get a franchise and open one of our shops?" So I did that, and it was a good experience, and I was, ready to do something like that. And then in 1994, my friend Doug Alton, he said, "I've got this single. I've got a Ducati Super Mono." I said, "I'm not interested in that rubbish." I says, "You can get lost. I'm not interested bloody riding that crap." He says, "Well, what I'll do is I'll bring it down to the shop, let you have a look at it." It was unbelievable. You've got to see, even now today, it looked 10 times nicer than Fogarty's 916. It was amazing. And I looked at it and I thought, and then
Time to get the cape out the cupboard.
he said a key word. He said, first race, Daytona. That was it. I was in then.
How did you do on it?
I won it. Yeah.
One Daytona?
Yeah.
Yeah. Was the big prize money back then?
Yeah, well, there was, because there was 2 waves. Yeah, the first wave and the second wave, and there was this superstar called Rodney Fee, and he was in the first wave. And I said to the guy who was the top man who was running the show, I said, look, I tell you what I'll do is I'll set off in the second wave, and if I beat him, you pay me double. And if I don't, that's 20-second lead he's got. I said, if you don't, we'll not bother. We'll call it a do. And I beat him. And it was ages to catch, because I couldn't see him visually on the track, it felt like forever. But as soon as I could see him down the back straight, I just pulled him in like that. It was just amazing how I could.
Did you know nowadays it's like 25 grand plus like a 25 grand watch for a win? Was it big money then, or was it?
No, I think you got a couple of $1,000 or something like that. But I mean, it's all sort of nice, you know.
I'd like to put a shameless plug out there. Me and Chrissy are still looking for a Daytona ride.
I'd love to go.
I would love that.
I've got a friend.
Sort it out, Alan.
I've got a friend who owns a bike shop in Miami.
Right.
Yeah, really top. He's a racer. He's raced for 40 years.
Get it sorted. We need bikes.
At what point?
No problem.
Good lad.
Were you still racing when your father passed away, or was that after you'd retired?
No, my dad passed away in 2009. And
that's a long time after you'd retired.
Yeah. The only racing I did is I did a little bit with my nephew, Kenny's son, Malcolm Jr. I raced with Malcolm in CB 500s, and we did that in 2002.
Right. So from 94 to 2002, you not being near a track or watching, just went.
No,
I don't know.
I did a test day with Ron and Leon and Jay Vincent, and we did a test. We did it at the Ron Haslam Racing School. And then what we did is I had a word with Ron and said, what do you think? He said, I think you'll be in the top 3. And I remember looking at him thinking, no, I'm going to win. And
you hadn't lost that mentality.
No. And I won by 5 seconds at Donington. My nephew was a bit arrogant because he got fined. He crashed on the first lap, on the warm-up lap off the start, and got fined £60, I think, and I won the race and got £50. So I just said, do you know,
got fined for crashing.
Yeah. Warm-up.
Is that in today still?
2002.
No, I'm just wondering, is that enforced today? That's it.
It was a bit sad, really, because Malcolm was really good potential. I just couldn't really get through to him. But lovely kid, I just couldn't get through to him. And then I said to him, you know, if you want to try the Laurel, they feel really nice.
Oh, you bellend.
Malcolm's actually just started racing CB 500s again with a good friend of mine, Gareth Hankinson, one of my sponsors. He races with
XL Signs.
And they've just started.
Going all right.
Gareth used to race in like British Superstock years ago, and for years I'm always going around and get stickers and telling he's always asking about pestering him basically, telling him about the race. And then he bought a CB 500 back end of last year. They went over to Almeria or Cartagena or something, and they've been racing this year.
He's been roofed, didn't he? God love him. I think he properly bent his bike.
I think he's going well, is he?
Yeah. Oh, he can pedal a bike.
It's great class, that, isn't it? Because it's cheap racing and get stuck in and whatever.
So we got to 2002, no 3, with your nephew, and then
1994. Sorry, just going back a little bit, guys.
Yeah.
You wanted to know about World Superbikes?
Yes.
Yeah. Just a very brief thing. So I raced this single, won Daytona. Then I won the Northwest on it. It's a bit crazy, real. Billy Nutt, who was the organizer, he said to me, "We'd like you." I said, "I'm a bit skimp, Billy. It's not cheap." He says, "How much do you want?" I says, I need $2.5 grand. He says, "No problem." Right.
You're going shit.
So I remember because one of my friends who worked for Johnny Ray's dad, well, Johnny's granddad, he said when I won, he was going nuts. It was the same day as the FA Cup in 1994, and this guy said, has so-and-so won the FA Cup? And Billy goes, no, he says, Alan Carter's just won the Northwest 200. And it was like, just ace.
So fantastic.
But like going back, like Chrissy's question, you know, you did the Northwest, you cracked on, you won it, you did everything. Like, and like, why didn't you not? Was that an itch that you just thought, I've scratched it now, I've done road racing, or thought, why not the TT and why not the Ulster? And
I don't know. I went to many Ulsters, 77, 78,
competed?
79. No, just watching as a kid. Ron on my dad's bikes and Johnny Ray's, granddad used to sponsor Joey, his main sponsor, and you know, Joey was the man, and Ron, and I don't know. I just did the. I did the Northwest. I didn't really go. I just went. I don't know if I went there for the money or I don't know. I just went and had a good bike, and I beat Jim Moody and Mike Edwards.
Yeah,
and they were the top boys, and enjoyed it. Then I went to do an international Magello, and I think I finished third there. I think Killy won it. Somebody else was second on a factory BMW, and I finished third. Virginio Ferrari was Carl's teammate in the World Superbikes, and he was head-to-head with Scott Russell. And then we asked... Virginio actually was world number 2, 3 years, I think, on the trot. He finished third in the 500cc World Championship. And I asked him if we could race the bike at Donington. And he said, I'll need to speak to Carl first. And I thought, I just thought Carl will say no. Don't know why, because we get on really well, but I just thought he'd say no. And Carl said yeah. So the next minute I was in a round of the World Championship at Donington, and the bike had been smashed up. Virginia crashed it and it was badly smashed up. But when they brought it to Donington, obviously it looked like a brand new bike. Somebody they forgot to tighten one of the oil cooler bolts, so I got black flagged. And second practice I crashed because I was on the back foot, and then I was about 32nd quickest. It just was a bit of a nightmare. And then Sunday it rained, and that was it. Get out of jail. Yeah. Finished 4th and 6th.
Happy days.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a thing, just jumping on a bike. Imagine just jumping on a bike in World Superbikes that you haven't been testing, don't know, finishing 4th and 6th.
I never even sat on one.
No, like the level. Yeah, I mean, you watch World Superbikes now, and you know how difficult and how it's a hell of a level. But yeah, amazing.
So we've done the road race, and then we've gone from there. We've done the Worlds, and then we've done 2003 with your nephew, and then from 2003 to 2017 when you first came back. And what made the 2017 return difficult? Because earlier in the podcast you said, I'm not sure if I want to do this. From 2003 to 2017, like what was, what disheartened you, to be blunt?
Well, so 2002, well, that kind of just fizzled out.
Yeah.
And then it was more Malcolm really and his attitude than anything, but he was young, and he's a really nice kid. We went, a few years went by, and I got kids. I was running, bringing and raising my own 3 boys. So coming back into racing, how it started was 2015. I got a phone call saying...
Still a gap, isn't it?
2015, I got a phone call saying we would like you to be one of the stars at the Pro-Am at Silverstone, the British Grand Prix. And I said, okay, I'd love to do it. How much can you pay me? I need, I've got nothing. I've got no helmet, no leathers, nothing. And he says, we'll give you 60 quid. I can't tell you what I said, but obviously I wasn't.
Something begin with F and then end with another F on the far side of it.
I never appeared. I'm dead honest and dead frank. People in BSB love me or don't like me, but that's fine.
That's life, mate.
I'm quite happy with that. I know that I know my stuff inside out, and anybody who's been under my wings got better. Probably as a person as well as a racer. So the following year, I got the same phone call from the guy. Do you want to do the Pro-Am 2016? I told him the same price. I said, it's £2,500. And he said, can I pay you in British Grand Prix tickets? Yeah. I thought, yeah, all right. So then I met a lovely guy. I don't know if you've
given everyone in the BSB an idea, by the way. Well done.
Well,
Josh Brooksby on the corner of the street. Get your tickets here, get your tickets.
I don't even know. Can I have one of them drinks?
And Bridewell will be on the other side of the road going, I'm doing them cheaper. I'm doing them cheaper.
So what happened was, I'm like, £2,500 tickets. What am I going to do with these? Not a clue, right? But deal's on. So I must have come across a guy called Mark Kilner. You remember the Candyman? Mm-hmm. What a lovely guy. Well, there was another guy called Mark Kilner.
Hold on, sorry. In the Candyman?
Yeah.
Yeah, Andy.
Yeah.
Andy he's from Newcastle, and unfortunately he was the loveliest bloke in the world. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago. He used to come and
mate, I had a different.
He didn't give you sweets to sit on your knee, Chris.
I'm just thinking. I'm really glad that I'm learning about this media game, because normally I would have wailed straight in. So yeah, sorry. Continues to the Candyman.
I sense that. No, Andy was a diamond of the paddock, and he used to drive a motorhome for some Pete Banks, I think it was. But he used to come and he used to stop off and get loads of sweets at the beginning of before the weekend, and then sell them off for charity. Or he used to come round and give them to everyone. Make a donation, and then he used to raise money for charity.
Class.
He used to do brilliant. He used to set himself a little awning up in the paddock and do bacon and egg sandwiches for anybody all weekend, just a donation for the charity.
What a fella!
And he was just an absolute diamond of a guy. Massive miss to BSB.
Oh,
but yeah. Sorry, what you said, Mark Kilner.
Yeah. So this guy, lovely guy, ex-racing, Mark Kilner, checked his pictures out. What a style! I mean, the kid. I can't remember him, but he raced and. He had a big media profile on Facebook, and he said, I'll sell all the tickets for you. So I said, okay, so whatever tickets you need for BSB or whatever I can do for you, I will do my best to help you too, because I like helping people. I think it's nice to be nice and polite and sociable. So he sold all the tickets. So I went there, had a few girlfriend troubles as well at that time, and crashed 3 times. Seriously, crashed 3. It was just nuts.
In the pram?
Yeah. It was just, I crashed on the I crashed on the warm-up lap. I crashed on the warm-up.
Okay, can we go?
I swear, I crashed on the warm-up lap. Right, no, hang on. I'll tell you what. Right.
You know, all your students that'll be listening to this, can he tells me the opposite.
I'll tell you how, this is how it went, right? I turned up, fired up. I'm going to win. Right? There's no... Mackenzie is having it again.
I love this.
Right? He's having it again. There's no even... He's having it. I promise you. Right? It was like the British Grand Prix to me. That's my mentality. This is it.
He's getting a strip.
Yeah. So, I goes out there, and I'm getting quicker and quicker. Bit like when we did the flat track.
That was outstanding, by the way. Carry on.
And then... qualifying. Absolutely pole position. Going up, I come out of Brooklands into that right, and I lost the back end. I had both feet down, nearly crashed, and I qualified 3rd, which was unbelievable, really. I mean, I'm taking it deadly serious. This ain't no, I mean, it's no parade to me. So my 2 mates came over, laughing. They said, we saw it. I said, did you see it? He said, yeah. I said, God, you were lucky. I said, I had pole there, didn't I? He said, oh, definite. But my feet were down, everything. So I got talking to this Stefan Prine. Is it Stefan Prine? He was in it, the ex-Grand Prix racer. He's in it. And he says, you like try this before race? And he had his drinks bottle were full of vodka. It was. Seriously, I couldn't believe it. Big, looked like a 2-litre drinks bottle with vodka in it.
What a fella.
I said, I'm all right, I'm okay. I'll probably have a couple after, but not now. So in the race, my 2 mates are on the grandstand. They've been in the game a long time. And I dropped to 4th. And the 2 at the front were going at it. And Stefan Prine, I think he was might not be Stephen Brown, I can't think of this guy. Anyway, this geezer for Grand Prix runner comes past me. I thought, geez, he's absolutely on it. Massive crash. And I'm back into third and I'm sort of there. And something went in my head. I can win this. Again, I can win this. Because my two mates said, oh, look, he's settled. Oh, brilliant, he's settled. And then one of my mates goes, oh, beep, he hasn't. He's on, look. And I started to catch him. And I had a big crash. Massive crash.
Did you hurt yourself?
No, never. I don't know why. I never did. Never really hurt myself when I crashed. So that was that. But these tickets that we sold, this kid rang me called Ryan Vickers. He says, I'm Ryan Vickers. I've got 6 tickets. I've got 6. My sponsor's got me 6. So I'll meet you at the gate. So I met him at the gate and he's had a beautiful face, cheeky little chappy. And I thought, he stuck in my head. I thought, what a nice kid. He's lovely. I really like this kid. So a few months after, I get a phone call about 6 months after, can you come to BSB and coach this kid? And I'd not met Tracy yet, so I says, I'll tell you what I'll do, I'll come to Donington, have a look at you, see what you like, but I can't come on race day because I'm meeting this bird for the first time, Tracy. So I
don't coach cock blocks.
I'll tell you what's mental. I get to Donington, I'm at the side track and it's like I've never been away. And they're all coming past. And I'm looking and I'm like, where is this Ryan Vickers kid? I didn't even see him. I saw this kid in a yellow helmet. I thought, he's the business. Dan Stamper, yeah. I saw this other kid, blue leathers with pink flashes down the back of his leathers. I thought, he's a goer, this kid. Tom Oliver. They were the two that stood out to me like that, bush. Didn't say it. I said to so I met Tracy next day. Said we'll have a quiet, low-key coffee. Took her out to meet the in-laws, first date. Everybody, my sons, my mates, everybody, just to check her out. She couldn't believe it. Did that. Gets another phone call. Brian Vickers, Paul, one of my good mates. Are you coming to Donington? I says, oh, no. I says, he's a bit shit. I'll leave it in this. He goes, no, you haven't seen the best of him yet. You got to come. By this time, Tracy had moved in with me. Obviously, we've been going out with each other for about 4 days, so that's how quick I move. It's just stupid, crazy, but that's how it went. So we set off to Brands.
Jesus wept.
Honest.
What made you move in? You can't answer that.
We moved it. I didn't even have an house. I fell out with this other girl, yeah, because she was doing my head in and the kids.
Right.
So I went and left, but nowhere to go. So I saw this big house, this big, beautiful house, and knocked on the door. Well, I've just got really mental health issues. And I said, hello. I said, I'm Alan, and I'm looking for somewhere to stay. I thought he was going to say, well, good for you, now fuck off. Right. He said, come on in. I swear he did.
The neighbour just...
Yeah, he just says, come on in. And I come in, and I told him my story. And he says, well, we'll have a think about it. We'll come back to you next day. He rang me. He says, when do you want to move in? It's £1 million house. So I moved in with them. And then I got Tracy to come. I chatted her up and then said, do you want to come down?
See my millionaire pad.
Well, no, I weren't like that. To be honest, I thought, how am I going to get a gear in without this guy knowing? You know what I mean? Because I was living on the top wing. And she was only coming down for 2 weeks. And she never went back. Now, what I can't understand, it's true, honestly, what I can't understand, I'm not saying that her husband were a bit slow, but if you came home and there was a big suitcase there, would you not be like, what's going on here, love? Because I would, wouldn't you? I'd be like, what's going on here? You didn't even say a word.
Oh.
No. It was 3 weeks after he rang up and says, what's happening? Are you coming home? And she said, no. And that's it. Really.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Do you want to give?
Adding that in a bit.
Do you want to give your sponsors a shout out? Because you've got lovely top and lovely thing. Obviously, Giles and Ellie, good friends of yours.
Yeah.
And
I tell you what, I'm so glad you said that, because the second, like, bearing in mind, your good lady made us a tuna pasta bake and everything.
amazing,
It was a
wasn't it?
lovely banana bread, the whole thing. And there's civilian Alan, and then enter racing Alan.
Yeah.
Corporate as I love it, mate. Big
yeah.
fan of your work. Once a racer, always a racer. Get the sponsors on there, get the right top on.
Can I just tell you one thing about round 2? Even if we're not going live with this, round 2 is Brands Hatch. So I turn up, I stop halfway there by Stonehenge, right? Can't do this, I'm turning back. Kept going, turned up, slept in the back of the car, didn't have anything, didn't have a pickup, didn't have a caravan, nothing. I lived at this guy's house and I had a car. That's all I had to my name, and 60 quid. So
Were you working at this point as well?
yeah. I had a prestigious job as a yoghurt mixer. Because I like these Yeo Valley yogurts, so I thought, I wonder how they make it. So what I'll do is I'll get a job there, I'll know how to make it. So I got a job as the master blender. I used to make it, I used to love it. And
Is this like in a factory or something?
yeah, that's where that stupid hat and clock in and clock out, but I didn't care. I got 4 days on and 4 off. So if you took 4 off, you get 12 off, and if you took 8 off, you could have 20 days off. So it fit in with me racing and Ryan and what we were doing. So did that for a while.
Class.
So gets to Brands Hatch, goes down to pits. He's pissed off with Key. What are you on about? Guy who owns the bike, they've had a row, Ryan and his dad, and he's took the key for the bike and that's it. And I've just driven all the way there. Now Paul's dad, obviously Paul's like me, he's not, we're not big people. I goes and finds this guy who owned the bike and he was about 6'8", massive. So I talked him round and says, look, can we just sort of solve this tonight? And, let's, let him ride the bike. And we had a meal in the Kentagon and you know what I mean? So that's what happened. And he rode the bike and he qualified 22nd on the Indy track and finished 7th. And it brought tears to my eyes. Seriously, it was one of the best performances I've ever seen. 22nd to 7th on that little track. That takes some doing. And then he fell out with his sponsor and his granddad bought him a new bike. And then we went from there.
I'm kind of looking back. Are you grateful to the Vickers family for sort of getting you back into into the racing and sort of back? I mean, like if you look at your life now and with Tracy and with the caravan and coming to the racing and having a great time, and if sort of going back and joining the dots, I don't think that you would be in this position if Ryan hadn't rang you up and got you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it was to be honest, it was the guy who rang me was a guy called Chris Satchell who was sponsoring Ryan, and he wanted me to be his coach, and I said I'll have a look at him, and Ryan's, I wish I was still working with him. We have a really good connection, and I think he had a lot of learning still and maturing to do.
Yeah,
and I just was obviously saddened that he'd stopped listening, but it's very difficult, when you're young and fame and things come along quick.
Yeah.
I've been there and done it, so I could understand that side. But, he's a very talented kid.
Yeah. Do you know, it's a lot of the time we'll have people on the podcast where you're kind of going through the life story and it's almost like cherry picking all the best bits and I guess a lot of people probably listen to this podcast and the think to them, they're like, can't really relate to a lot of people that are getting interviewed because they're just talking about amazing and
going around the world and doing this.
I think a lot of people will probably listen to the podcast and sort of think to themselves what if compare their life and it's.
Mate,
I think
I feel like every interview, and I've
from reading your book and obviously from knowing you so well, I've never known someone who's had such a range from the very highest to the very lowest. But there's so many people that will be listening to this that are probably, the peaks and troughs of life. Lots of people, there'll be lots of people that are in a trough at the moment and they'll be really feel like the world's on top of them and things are real shit and maybe not enjoying the job and things. And from your life story and from things, there's some of the lows have been that low, but yet you keep going and you get through them, and look what you're doing now, and it's I think a lot of people can probably look at you as an example of and think to themselves getting through hard times, basically like an inspiration for getting through hard times, because
gosh, it's so bizarre. It's like all my life I kind of use this thing about me being a little rabbit, right? So I'm a little rabbit in a field, and I'm just bobbing along having a fantastic day, and this big Irish giant or whatever comes along and smashes me over the head with a spade. And I dust myself down and off I pop again, and it takes me a while, and I'm a bit, I come round, I'm off bobbing again, and then whoosh, and that's what's kind of happened. Obviously the highs are not as high now, but the lows are not as low. The mental health situation, if there's anybody out there who wants to talk to me, you can pass my number on, or at the BSB, feel free to come up and chat to me, because I have these periods where I'm feeling really bad and can't attend, but I always do attend, and I have periods where I'm on fire. Thruxton was a downside this year, and coming into Cabell was still not brilliant, but I'm coming out of it now. And one of the things that we use is, if you feel like a V12, could you kill yourself? No, you can't, can you? So if...
What do you mean by V12?
Right, so if we have a Ferris wheel, right? 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 and 9. And this is your mental health. Your health, wealth, happiness, everything revolves like a watch, the seconds. 12 o'clock, you feel fantastic, yeah? Everything's flying, home's good, work's good, everything's great. Then you get down to 3 o'clock and I think you're just not feeling as sharp. And then what happens is, but this is such a slow evolving process, when you hit the bottom, you feel like suicidal. And that's something that's getting less and less with me. But many years, when I get to that period, that's when I want to do it, take my life. And that's the period where you've got to just ride through, where you've just got to endure this and know that the good times are coming. And this is a cycle that never stops for me. So then we come back up to 9 o'clock, which is where I am now. So about 9 o'clock. So I'm not feeling like the old Alan, like real dynamic, fun, etc. You'll see, if you watch my personality traits at the meetings, you'll just know. So probably by next weekend I'll be flying, which is great. But then when you're at the top, you're like a V12, you can't think of anything like self-harming or taking your life, because you feel euphoric. So, but then the thing is there, that what's coming. So it's management. So all I've done is really learn how to manage this as best I can.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant, so but thank you for that. Mm-hmm. I just think that not a lot of people would just willingly want to hand over their number like that and everything. So no, fair play. And I feel like throughout this conversation we've only scratched the surface. You know what I mean? If you obviously you're approachable. You can go chat to you, but you've got maybe not trying to make it sound like a shameless plug here, but you actually have your own book, don't you? With your life story. Yeah.
I wrote my book.
Yeah.
Nobody wrote it for me. I wrote my whole. A guy said I need 90,000 words. I wrote 120,000 words. And
was that something you wanted to do for a while, or did someone sort of poke you to do it, or?
No, I just had probably too much anger and too much bitterness about not being the world champion. I mean, we go back to the early 80s, and we've had Rossi and Marquez and people like that, and I was in the same mould, and it just didn't work out. And I did the best I could with what I had. I've got several friends who are all world champions, and they've all said to me, especially Jon Eckerol, the 350 world champion, listen, you were part of it. You did the best you could with what you had. And that's something that hits back at me, that we did the best what we could with what we had. We won the Stock 1000 championship in 2020, and we took it to Honda, and it was meant to be, and we were smart. We had a great team, and it was our time. Mm-hmm. Let's hopefully get some more.
Yeah. Damn right.
Right. In terms of your book, if people, and I'm not just, I've mentioned this before on various podcasts.
Yeah.
it's one of my favourite. I love racing autobiographies. I listen to quite a few on Audible and read some occasionally. But and I'm probably biased because of we're such good friends. So when you know somebody, and then I don't know, it just I absolutely loved reading it. But I bought it for China the other day, and she absolutely loved it.
Bless.
And I've just bought another one for somebody else and sent that off. But if anyone wants to buy a book, what's the best way of doing that?
Yeah, for all the social media platforms out, the one that we use the most is Facebook. We do some Instagram, but Facebook, Tracy or myself.
And it's Alan Carter on Facebook.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the best way because we sell them cheaper than anybody. There's not many people got them now, and we just try and do it.
And also
we're on 5% commission.
I was going to say also it's a
I owe you 20 quid because I said I'd give you 10 quid for every book you sold.
Yeah, it's actually.
Where was my cut, you cheeky little?
You hadn't sold any.
I'll sell this part. Buy a book. Buy a book.
It's actually
£10 a book.
I was going to say it's actually a good.
Because I want 2,500 tickets for the next BSP.
It's actually a good investment as well because the second-hand market for them. What's the highest you've seen them go for on Amazon?
The most I've seen it is in the USA for $1,660. No, honest. Regular at £300, £400, £500. It's just crazy.
So at £22, this is a bargain on Chasin The Racin.
How much? Posted in the UK, how much?
Well, I just charge £30 posted.
£30 posted. So if anyone wants one, if they either send Alan a message, if you can't get in touch with Alan directly, if you message any of the podcast things, I'll send you your details through. And but yeah, I highly recommend it. I'm not a very emotional person, I would say, in general. So like
heartless, Chrissy. Yeah,
like say watching watching movies or TV programs, I very rarely get emotional. And I remember reading that it was when I was in hospital for, I think it was after when I was having problems with my shoulder, and I was sat in the holding area, like waiting area, and I had tears running down my face, snot things. And 1 minute I'd be crying my eyes out, the next minute I'd be laughing, and it's an amazing book. So I highly recommend it for anybody that's interested in bike racing. It's been lovely having you on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed it. And by the time this podcast goes out, it'll actually be on the Sunday night after Snetterden. So hopefully we've had a great weekend racing, and we've got a weekend off the following weekend. And then we're back to Alton. It's in the showdown in it. So Jesus. Is it Alton then Donington?
Alton Donington Brands.
Yeah. Alton Donington Brands, and the back end of the season's really tight together. So just a quick shout out as well. I was speaking to Chris from Bennett's, and they've opened up there's an opportunity for the BSB VIP package for Brands Hatch, so any Bennett's customers can apply for that. And it's brilliant. I don't know if you've seen what they're doing, but the safety car laps and all of the bottom garage at Brands is like a sort of a hospitality area for the Bennett's customers. So
have you
check that out.
done a safety? It'll be pretty boring for you probably, but for me, I got to do a safety car lap around Thruxton. It was class, man. Have you done one?
I have, yeah. I think it's 2017. I said to Stuart Higgs, obviously, is the big boss of the BSB, and I said, Stuart, could you organise for me to go around in one of the cars? And he did, and this guy, he told him who I was, and he was absolutely flat out. It was brilliant.
Good stuff. Good stuff. There you go. So Patreon question time before we let Loving leave you.
Yeah, we've only got a few Patreon questions, but one of them is from Craig Harris. I'm not sure if this is a question, but I'll read it out. It says, hope all are well. First off, just wanted to say thank you for the shout out for the racing in pink event at Castlecombe. We managed to raise £4,500 for Cancer Research UK, so thank you everyone. So massive thanks to everyone who donated. Brilliant. My question would be, in the 86 British GP, what did the marshals say to Alan to make him take a swing at him, or what was said after the race about it? He didn't say anything. He just stopped you from trying to stop you from getting on the bike, didn't he?
No, he didn't. I'll tell you exactly what happened. There was only one thing damaged on the bike. It was the clutch lever. The clutch lever had snapped, and I put the clutch lever back in, and he went to tap me on the arm, and when he hit my arm, the clutch lever fell back out, and I was just about to get back on. And I was absolutely infuriated, so I swung for him. So it was just that he tapped me on the arm, probably to say get off the track or are you okay? I don't know, but the lever just dropped back out. You can see me. I'm there at the front, just putting the lever back in, and I just managed to get it in. Just only needed it once just to get going. So I got it in, but in the fiasco of the crash, when I went to push it and bump start it, I was in 6th gear instead of first.
Right.
Oh, it just.
Did you get fined for that, by the way?
No.
Didn't ask. You would these days, wouldn't you? And also to hey up chaps, hope you're all well. Did Alan ever get the offer of a proper crack at 500s, or was it more commonplace back then to stick to what you know as much? Any opportunities for less desirable 500 rides that weren't worth it? Cheers lads. We talked about you did have the opportunity for 500, but you went to America instead. So I covered that naturally during the podcast. And massive thank you to our sponsors, Colchester Kawasaki. Huge thank you to our patrons. Go on, Alan.
Watches of Distinction. Giles Waite sponsored me for 12 years. Absolutely fabulous guy. Sponsors many people in the paddock. And Diamonds Are Forever. Ellie Waite also supports me, and they're just fabulous people who you can.
Anyone in the market for a high-end watch, if you check out Watches of Distinction online, or give Giles a call.
Brilliant.
I'm proud of you boys. Once a race, always a racer. That was so well done between you there. Very, very good. Very, very professional. I'll tell you what, before we totally wrap up, I've been sent the correct name from the previous podcast that I thought I'd get right for the 3rd place gentleman who got the loan and bought the bike and everything like that. Stuart Hall. I'm a man of my word. Done. There you are. He got 3rd on the podium at the Manx Grand Prix. He got a loan for the bike, everything like that. His dream to go, and he got on the.
I know Stuart really well.
Stuart Hall.
Yeah.
There we are. Then.
He's a very, very fast man.
There you are.
Serious.
But he got a loan.
I'll tell you a little story. I raced in 2012 the Classics, and I went to Pembrey, and my crankshaft broke coming out of the awning to the track. And Stuart's dad is a famous racer called Rob Hall. They have the best 350s in the country. So he had a brain damage slightly from a crash, did his dad. So Stuart's dad, Rob, and he couldn't race at Pembrey. This is about 18 months after this big accident. My bike had obviously expired in the pits. I went over to Rob and didn't know him and said, would it be possible for me to race your bike because you're not riding? And he said, no problems. And I finished 2nd. I just missed winning by about a wheel on a bike. I was on Avons, that was on Dunlops, and I'd never sat on it in my life. And the kid who beat me was a guy called Chris Bishop, quick kid. But Stuart is a one hell of a rider.
There you are. See, it was written in the stars to get his name wrong in the previous pod, so there you go. That is a perfect shout for Stuart Hall. But like you were saying, Chrissy, obviously thanks to our sponsors, patrons, and everyone.
Yeah, excellent, and I look forward to catching up soon. Take care.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alan.
Cheers,
Take
Al.
care.
Chasin The Racin, powered by Colchester Kawasaki, part of the Global Moto Group. We supply new Aprilia, Moto Guzzi, Vespa, Royal Enfield, Kawasaki, Sim, Mutt, and Benelli motorcycles.